7 years ago, a manga would end, having only a handful of chapters translated into English, which a much younger me, falling into the rabbit hole of Shonen Jump for the first time, adored. But I never got to see how that story ended, until now. Today on the X-Files, we unearth a work of manga that will take us through underground civilizations, through the Bermuda Triangle, to Atlantis, and even through time itself. Full name, Noah's Notes. Start date, March 12th, 2018. End date, August 20th, 2018. Total chapters, 22, compiled into 3 volumes. Haruto Ikizawa bears a pen name in reference and respect to Shonen Jump artist Haruto Umezawa, known for series like Hallelujah 2 Boy and Brahman from within the magazine. Ikizawa would start their manga journey with the one-shot Atelier as a submission for the Jump Newcomer Award in 2009, with the work later being published online. This follows a magical painter who can conjure things into reality and helps others as they travel throughout a fantasy world. They would then get an honorable mention in the 2010 Tezuka Award for their one-shot Double Nine. Furthermore, they would work as an assistant on One Piece for a while, and in combined issue 3-4 of Weekly Shonen Jump, the one-shot for Kurogane would then be published, with it becoming a series later on in the year in issue 39. Kurogane would follow the titular main character, a weak boy with no strength save his great eyesight, who one day has a chance encounter with Sayuri Tojo, a ghost from 150 years ago who ends up bestowing upon him the greatest sword techniques of the past. This would be a kendo manga lasting 70 chapters and 8 volumes, which for a first series is pretty good. A year after Kurogane would end, Kamidori would be published in Shonen Jump's 24th issue of 2014. This one-shot would follow a thief named Goemon and his antics after getting possessed by a god of misfortune. This one-shot's translated, by the way, if you'd like to read it, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It would also be later bundled in with Noah's Notes for its final volume. But before we get to that, we have Ikizawa's next serialization in Jump, Mononofu. This would begin in issue 42 of 2015, being a manga about a boy named Takara Shinobu who accidentally moves into a share house full of shogi players. He would then follow after them, finding his passion for shogi and begin to attend tournaments. This would last 43 chapters, which is by no means a swift cancellation, and a few years later in Shonen Jump issue 15 of 2018, our current story would finally begin. History is something that our protagonist, Mirai Kotobuki, thinks is useless to study. How can learning anything about the past inform her and help her attain the future she wants? Mirai is just an average gal. Her grades aren't good, she loves nice food, and one day would like to get married, but all of this changes one day when she finds a weird rock and posts about it on social media. But what she actually found is a fossil, the fossilized remains of something from 4 years in the future, revealed to her when a crazy archaeologist brandishing a gun named Noah comes crashing into her school via helicopter. Noah's Notes is the exploration of past and future. We follow Noah as he drags Mirai along into this historical adventure in order to unravel the secrets of the world's history. Quite forcefully, I might add, as Noah legit sticks a gun in Mirai's mouth and makes her come along due to her brushing off history and having no supposed interest in it. In order to foster a love of history in her, Noah first takes Mirai underneath Yokohama's subway system to an excavated cave which contains an odd-shaped keyhole, the key being the object Mirai found fossilized. Mirai is then prompted to open whatever the lock contains, and it's a switch to an elevator that leads the two all the way down to the ruins of Yokohama's Minato Mirai district from 100,000 years in the past. Noah then reveals that back in 2022, 100,000 years ago, the world ended, with the world now looping back once it hits that point again. Noah studies history and looks for notes, future fossils from the past, in hopes he can understand what happened in order to stop humanity's impending cataclysm 4 years from now when the world will loop again. So in a very tangible way, Mirai realizes that learning about history is very important. Due to this, she opts to accompany Noah as he attempts to unearth our ancient history in the hopes he can find the answers he needs to save the world. This leads them to Italy on a scavenger hunt to find a note that might give them a clue as to what happens in 2022. Here we get Mirai being an adorable little idiot and a bunch of scenes discussing the food of the area like pizza, as Noah puts it.
Pizza time.
The panel of Mirai eating the pizza never fails to make me hungry, it just looks so good. Noah also brings up that the idea of food, recipes, and culture like this is also part of human history. Often Noah will go on small tangents like this, and I think it helps to give something to think about to Mirai and the readers on what history is and what it means to us on an individual and collective level. It being about something as universal as food and as widely loved as pizza is a great way to get everyone on board. This consistency in relating everything back to history and our path as humans is great for reinforcing its themes. Italy isn't all pizzas and gelato though, as these two aren't the only ones looking for this prized note. The local mafia are too, but also someone much more sinister, a member of the Knights Templar. A cat and mouse chase in the catacombs under the San Polo monastery begins as everyone scrounges for the note, but the knight that chases Noah and Mirai is armed with future technology, a laser thought to be the basis of gun gear from Norse mythology. To beat them, Noah concocts a plan based on information he's gathered and finds a flaw in the supposed laser, throwing a smoke bomb that's comprised of liquid nitrogen to lower the temperature, thus making it ineffective, as what it actually is a souped up lighter from the future. Impressed, the knight ends up letting Noah go, telling him to find the ID and bidding him arrivederci. On Mirai's side, she was tasked with protecting the note and running from the mafia, which while it does feel like a secondary objective, I love her little arc here of realizing that the ideal future you might imagine, or a future in general, is something that's not necessarily guaranteed. You need to be active to attain the future you want. And Noah's Notes wraps this in a message about history being actions that people have done. History isn't a passive thing, it chronicles active events and decisions humanity has made. Noah's speech to Mirai wraps around being a lesson in what history is, while also giving her the courage to be active and to fight in order to attain the future she desires. It's a really strong and well-written arc. The next lead the crew pursue has paleontologist and old friend of Noah, Lu Long, join the crew as they attempt to explore the Bermuda Triangle and find an island which might contain a hint of what happened in 2022, as well as the mysteries surrounding the Count of Saint Germain, who they've tied into their loop theory. A supposed wandering immortal which Noah has theorized might be a remnant of a previous loop somehow. As it is the Bermuda Triangle, the crew are beset with all sorts of oceanic obstacles like methane gas explosions and massive waves, which the crew escapes from via a makeshift hot air balloon powered by the lighter high note, allowing them to safely arrive on the island, which has the remnants of a pre-loop city. Before they get there, they meet a certified cutie though in Hunt, a French bulldog who has been on the island waiting for his friend for a long while. They aren't the only ones on the island though, as a regiment of the Knights Templar has also arrived, and in a move that would make even Iraqi blush, one of them kills the dog in a page turn that absolutely floored me. Lu Long then engages with Hunt's killer, the 11th Apostle Tiziano, who has a high note comprised of extra mechanical hands, but they don't prove too useful as Lu Long uses his animal communication ability to influence fungi to attack him, as well as a shark to finish him off. After the fact, we also find out Hunt is actually okay. He's immortal as a matter of fact and has been on the island waiting for a very long time, which makes sense with the Count of Saint Germain theory, with them likely being Hunt's friend. Meanwhile, Noah and Mirai have a battle with Artemisa, the 9th Apostle, who has a Kojima-esque high note that makes fighting as scantily clad as possible optimal, which is the gateway for a lot of fanservice. Noah manages to outsmart her though with the lighter's gas, as well as a part of Tiziano's high note he stole earlier, allowing him to beat her. The final Knights Templar member here isn't so easy to defeat though. He manages to just freeze everyone in place and then just nukes the city our protagonists wanted to explore before disappearing. It's interesting that he doesn't just kill all the protagonists here, and he also overlooks an underground lab Noah finds, so perhaps he has deeper motives or this is some shoddy writing. Either way, we'd never get to know. This lab contains the computer system which is causing some of the Bermuda Triangle's obscurities, as well as the Siren Song which has been mentioned throughout this arc. Noah manages to decode it, and it's actually a song for Hunt. a song from his old friend and partner telling him he's sorry for leaving him alone this entire time, expressing his wishes of love for an old friend. While we didn't learn anything about the pre-loop civilization, Noah muses over the fact that an archaeologist's job is to connect the desires of people from the past and present, uncovering what humanity of years past wanted to say, which is a really nice sentiment to end the arc on, and is relevant to the overall tone and meaning the series wants to convey about humanity being connected throughout history. The final arc then sees Noah and the rest of the Arc Lab members get a message from their old professor giving them a lead to the lost city of Atlantis. To get there, they must first go through the faux country of Nautilus, somewhere that doesn't exist in our real world but is an island off the coast of Dubai. We get to meet Noah's other cohorts here who all specialize in different fields and would have likely gotten a greater focus on if the manga lasted longer. Together, they use their abilities and specialities to track down where exactly Atlantis is, in an oasis in the center of Nautilus, where upon finding it they meet up with their professor, who seems to be well acquainted with Mirai for some reason, something that has been foreshadowed here and there with her spells of deja vu. Mirai then gets shot by the professor, who cryptically puts forward the idea that Mirai is an irregularity of the loops, someone who was meant to die the day she met Noah but didn't, due to the cat she followed that day. It's not something that ever gets fully revealed, but the NN on its collar makes me believe Noah or a past Mirai somehow set this up so that she can meet Noah in the future. There's probably some time paradox stuff there, I don't know, we never really get coherent answers. Mirai, with her dying breaths, pleads to the professor to make her dream come true before she dies. Then, regaining consciousness, she's back in her classroom at the beginning of the manga, and we get a few pages mirroring the very first chapter, but this time, instead of a fossilized key, she finds a fossilized book, which loops back to the very first page of the manga where Mirai is reading Noah's notes. She then remembers everything. She is connected, her past, present, and future. She remembers the journey she went on with Noah, as well as some future info that probably hints at an explanation for all the loop stuff. But this is the final chapter, so the best we really get isn't an explanation, but a scene of Mirai reuniting with Noah, who upon reading the book realizes what's been going on, hopefully leading to this cycle being broken in the future, so Mirai can finally live up to her name and embrace the future she's always dreamed of. Noah's Notes is a manga that I think is hurt more than your usual axes by its sudden ending, as it actually had a story it clearly wanted to tell, and intricate mysteries that had been foreshadowed here and there. I don't want to undermine other works by saying that, but the way Noah is paced, all of the ideas and what it was trying to tackle, feels a lot more considered than most manga I tend to cover on the channel, and I think it's no secret that a lot of Shonen Jump manga are kind of written as they go on, resulting in some pretty messy stories and unsatisfying endings. I'm thoroughly impressed by how well Noah's Notes communicates its ideas of history, passing on info to future generations, and the idea of feeling connected to your past selves or of humanity from the past. It's a personal favorite concept of mine, humanity's shared thread of existence, our interweaving story as a collective, and the manga touches on this in some fun ways. Mirai being our point of entry and the one person who is an abnormality for the loop is a great choice, as she's not some genius weirdo like the rest of the cast, she's just a gal, someone who isn't the brightest or the best at remembering anything, which allows her to be a good audience surrogate and an excellent sort of sponge for absorbing the story's ideas. Seeing her realize why history is important through the story allows her to experience some great development, and I think if Noah's Notes was allowed to finish on its own terms, that would become even more apparent, and the ending with her realizing everything from the past loops would have hit really hard. What Noah's Notes is trying to say is that history is important. The things we record, talk about, and translate matter a great deal. Noah's Notes is a manga that for the longest time as well was left unfinished in English. Shonen Jump would translate the first 3 chapters for their Jump Start initiative, but wouldn't do any more than that, which is a shame, as shortly after, every single manga that released within the magazine would get a full simulpub, like with how every new Jump manga now gets translated. An old group and fairly well known for its time, Jaimini's box would translate the first volume fully, with an individual known as Lintwhite under Varia quality scanlations, doing chapters 8 to 11, 3 years after Noah's Notes would end and 3 years after the initial volume got translated. And then, under a year ago, a new translation group called Gomez Scans came and finished off the rest. The English translation of Noah's Notes has involved many individuals from different points in history. It's an effort that took time, the curiosity and passion of a whole bunch of people, and it's created this kind of meta-narrative that works side by side with Noah's Notes' themes. I find it pretty fascinating since it's something that I think can only apply to older media that hasn't been localized. There's a digital archaeological approach where translation, cleaning and typesetting are the hammers and chisels in unearthing these manga so that us English-speaking folk can comprehend and appreciate them. This goes more for older manga, especially untranslated stuff from decades ago, but I would sometimes explain my process for making certain videos or reading specific manga as archaeological, along with me having the desire to unearth and learn about the past in a niche way through old manga. I've done this with my History of Jump videos, where I go back and examine, explore, and unearth old manga which for most people are largely forgotten. It's a satisfying and gratifying process, learning things at your own pace, sifting through digital and linguistic layers of sediment. In a way, I think it's fulfilling a weird dream I had as a young kid of being interested in dinosaurs and paleontology, but reframing it to my modern love of manga and stories. Noah's Notes may feel incomplete, certain aspects could have been or would have been done better with more time, but I'm incredibly moved by how it tackled its ideas, and the experience of reading it years ago in an incomplete state, with others finishing off its translation years later, has only aided in its thematic message in a bizarre meta way. Because of that, it's an experience I think I'll always treasure. As for what issues exactly plague Noah's Notes, I think its content, the ideas it's toying with, might be a bit niche for Jump. They're pretty academic sometimes, and the whole adventure aspect isn't something I think was widely popular or anything at the time. It also likely shared some of its audience with Dr. Stone, also being a science-focused series tackling very similar ideas and themes regarding humanity's legacy and its history, which was doing quite well at the time. The other rookies around Noah's Notes' length also would get axed alongside it, other than Jujutsu Kaisen, its batchmate, which no way was Jump going to cut, as it was doing far better than Noah's Notes. As much as I adore Noah's Notes, it also suffers in some places. The second arc in the Bermuda Triangle could have been condensed better, the stowaway characters don't add much to the story at all, and it ends in quite an abrupt way. The attempts at fan service and adding a cute dog didn't seem to help it either. There's also a lot of rumors surrounding Noah's Notes and Haruto Ikizawa generally, which I'll get into a bit later, but I think people blow these out of proportion, especially in the West. I think this is just your usual case in Jump of something not being popular enough, other things were doing better, and new manga need to be published, so room needs to be made. A bunch of people in the Discord also read Noah's Notes, so let's hear what they have to say too. First off, Santi really enjoyed it and had fun with Noah's Notes, especially liking its art. El Manu found Noah's Notes pacing a bit all over the place, with it being very rushed at points and text heavy elsewhere, which I can understand. There were parts it got very wordy, and sometimes I'd be enthralled, and other times I thought it could have moved along a bit faster and could have done with a lot less text. Joni praised the art and designs heavily, but found it suffered with its abundance of text, like we just mentioned. Sometimes it would also be a slog to get through, which they thought could be a big filter for other readers, which I agree with. Zenomat found the series erratic post its beginning, citing later additions like the high notes and fan service to feel very forced. To a degree, I think some elements were thrown out there to get people to pay attention to the series, though I don't fully agree with Zenomat that the author lacked confidence in their story. The mystery of the loop and how it is set up is really solid. The series, unfortunately getting rushed, couldn't handle the weight of its concepts and intricacy, at least that's how I see it with its ending. Andy's Island has a similar sentiment as well, stating that if you think things are randomly happening, to reread, as there are clues and foreshadowing for future events peppered here and there. But as it did get cancelled, it wasn't allowed enough time to solve or tidy everything up. Frostguy levels some criticism at Mirai, finding her out of place, although as I've mentioned previously, her existence and relevance to the plot is one of my favourite things about Noah's Notes. Valent is another who points at Mirai as having nothing redeeming about her as well. She's pretty integral to the story though, especially thematically, with Mirai not appreciating history initially as she's focused on her future, but then learns that the past is just as important and worth learning about, as a whole and in a more humanistic way. This is really the core of Noah's Notes, and I think without her, the story just wouldn't exist or would be extremely dull. I feel kind of bad for Mirai generally. She gets dunked on a lot in her own series by everyone calling her dumb, which is hilarious. And in a lot of comments, she gets a ton of criticism, and this might come down to her being a gal character. Some might not like this archetype, they might find it cliche or some other type of bad for simply existing, but I think having dumb characters, be they a gal like Mirai, a dumb himbo, or just someone silly, is great and I welcome it. Let people be dumb. Do you know how hard I laughed when Mirai asked why they were in Rome when Noah said he'd take her to Italy? I laughed like for a few minutes straight there. It's such a dumb, good joke. In this case too, Mirai is a character who learns and grows. It's not perfect as the series did get cancelled, but I find her development substantial. To me, she's quite three-dimensional and exists beyond just a gal. Okay, Mirai mini rant over. Propagande has a pretty unique critique focusing on the use or mention of the Wandering Jew in relation to the Count of Saint Germain. I do think the series is trying to interweave different stories and ideas together to explain the character of an immortal being here in a historical and lore context through this. Maybe being open-minded about how Noah's Notes co-opts concept like this, being critical with its uses of them is a good thing though. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it, but pulling out all of these ideas without proper consideration could lead to a lack of care for the history and ideas Noah's Notes wants to embrace and preach about. Largely, I do like how it does interweave all these different historical and mythological ideas though. Narrow comments on the fact we're lucky to get a translation for Noah's Notes, as it was one of the last things Viz translated officially initially, before dropping it only for us to get a full translation 7 years later. They have some problems with the fan service being intrusive and finding the battle elements a bit unnecessary, but overall did enjoy it. Jin 1 found it to be one of the stronger Axe manga, with its looping premise initially interesting them. They also like Mirai and find her adorable. Mirai gang represent. But do criticize the series for being dialogue heavy and it feeling like it didn't fully know what it wanted to be. Lumi, commenting for the first time, found the manga okay overall, giving some good description of why they liked or disliked certain characters. Their critique of the Knights Templar and the High Notes is something I wanted to touch on though, as I think they present a balanced point of view that ties into the criticisms about Noah's Notes feeling erratic or that it doesn't know what it wants to be. The initial fight with Monet and the lighter High Note is very clever, and a high-tech lighter malfunctioning acts as a cool weapon, but also doesn't sacrifice the smaller scope and cozy mystery Noah's Notes starts with. While later on weapons get a bit weirder, more sci-fi, and feel a lot more like weapons, giving way to a more battle manga feel. I don't mind this change, but I do think it would have been better if battles were toned down and more considered. Fights being more like the initial one, which had a more puzzle solving aspect, would have been really cool and would allow it to keep its initial vibe, which Lumi liked. Another part of their comment I want to touch on is the religious elements of the Templars, pushing their ideology that the loops are God's will, humanity must endlessly repeat. Lumi's comment of how curiosity and critical thinking could be discouraged by the dogma of religious organizations is exactly what I would have loved the series to tackle should it have gone on longer. Kinky gave Noah's Notes a lot of praise, liking its introduction and ending, which I think is the big reason why people do love the series. Regardless of the midsection, it begins and ends on a high. They also liked Noah, Mirai, and found the Templars to be strong enough as villains, with these elements seemingly outweighing the unfinished nature of its other parts. Cactus enjoyed Noah's Notes a lot too, pointing to the majority of its aspects as positives, like the characters of Noah and Mirai as well as their interactions. The fights with the High Notes and the antagonist's drip were also high points as well. This time I might be one of the biggest fans of the Axe manga, but I wanted to save Kinky's and Cactus's comments for last, since I pretty much agree with them both and their conclusions they reached, that it's good as well as interesting despite it not being able to wrap everything up. While it certainly isn't perfect and possesses faults, it was fun. My feelings reading it were ones of excitement, and at the end of the day, I think that amounts to a lot. Following the end of Noah's Notes, Haruto Ikizawa has pretty much disappeared, not having published a one-shot or manga since. While this isn't uncommon and they may be biding their time, a lot of rumours have circulated around them, especially in Japanese forums, about their current whereabouts and possible alias. Ikizawa is a manga surrounded by rumours. Jump is pretty rife with all sorts of them generally, and most don't really have much merit, so part of what I'm about to discuss is pure speculation and not fact in the slightest. There does exist a wiki or message board dedicated to trashing or collating Haruto Ikizawa's series. From my understanding, this was created after Ikizawa would post opinions on Twitter. In certain people's eyes, they saw him slandering other Jump series and their authors. What I think Ikizawa was actually talking about for the most part was the idea of Shonen Jump surveys and the manga like his, Kurigane at the time, are something you should vote on rather than a series like One Piece or Medaka Box, which were in a safer position because they were already established. People online took this as an attack on their favourite manga, and as Ikizawa vainly expressing that his series was more deserving, thus a hate thread was created. The website's still being updated to this day, and it also features a lot of detailed info on the manga, so I'm not entirely convinced it's all been made in bad faith. It's just a really odd thing to find. I really don't encourage making hate sites or massive hate blogs for mangaka. It's weird. Just enjoy stuff or dislike stuff, be critical, but don't be like an asshole online about it. There's no reason to. As part of this thread and general internet rumors surrounding Ikizawa, people also think that he's the mangaka responsible for the Jump Plus manga 2.5D Seduction, an ecchi manga that popped up in Jump Plus in 2019 by Yu Hashimoto. I can see why people might think this is Ikizawa, wanting to get away from their original pen name due to the negativity they had built up around it on the internet. Also, Yu Hashimoto hasn't made any other manga besides 2.5D Seduction, and some art looks a bit similar. Mainly both Noah's Notes and 2.5D Seduction have a lot of Yaro elements, I guess. There's also a section in 2.5D that has a mangaka lament about being a failed author, which people point to as well. Just in case this is wrong, I'll err on the side of speculation. Perhaps Haruto Ikizawa has been reborn into Yu Hashimoto, and perhaps not. People should also be a bit more wary before finding some Japanese thread and parroting anything people say as gospel there, as I've seen these rumors about Ikizawa getting cancelled because of his comments chatted about as fact, when that's simply unfounded. Based on the threads I found, which I'll link in the description, people get way too hung up on all of this hyper-analyzing everything. I'll also bear in mind machine translating these comments might lead them to be inaccurate, and you're dealing with the bias of the people who wrote them as well. This goes for everything generally, but especially for Shonen Jump manga. Don't take everything people say as fact, as sometimes it's not and leads to frustrating rumors like the ones that surround Ikizawa. And with those mysteries touched on, the book on Noah's Notes and Ikizawa is now closed. I'm very happy that Noah's Notes is finished translation, as I've been waiting to read it for about 7 years, so this really does feel like the end of a long journey. I hope you enjoyed my coverage of it, and if you have anything to say about Noah's Notes, feel free to leave a comment. If you like this video, please subscribe as well, as I make videos like this on Shonen Jump's cancelled manga all the time. I even have a video on one of the manga that would go on to replace Noah's Notes, Teenage Renaissance David, which is one of my all-time favourite Jump Axed manga. If you also like manga history, like I alluded to earlier, I have a whole series of videos going through Shonen Jump's past manga, beginning all the way back in 1968, with me recently having finished the 1992 video. And I plan to cover a lot more old manga in the future as well on the channel, so please stick around. I would also be grateful if you consider supporting me on Patreon. It helps a ton and pushes me to make better videos, as well as videos more frequently. You'll also get some cool bonus stuff like being thanked at the end of my videos, with you getting your own little doodle at the $3 tier, like Kinocha, Jade, Kaizoku Gairu, Soracool Zero, Holly the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Fako, Yellowtail, Lay Slogget, Crispy Bacon, Joe Henshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Weeby Boy, Wurzel, Valent, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vino Burrito, and also AB, Fakwa Draws, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, and John Sanford at the $1 tier. Thank you all so much for being patrons, and as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.